everybody, it's Corey with Natural Born Tillers. Thanks for joining us in this new installment in our series in exploring sustainable food in Georgia. Today we're moving on up to a deluxe apartment in the sky. So we're here at Northern Line Apartments, where we actually have a garden and we keep a garden for residents, but we're going to go up to a patio and try a container garden, something we've never tried before, and see if we can't help some residents grow their own food. So let's check it out and see what we can do. So we're on the Beltline. This is a beautiful view, and we're here with Amy, who's a resident. And Amy, you've graciously let us take over your balcony. Tell us a little bit about this space. Have you tried to grow stuff out here before?
I have tried to grow plants out here before. I do have a lot of succulents. I've tried basil in the past and have failed. Most of my plants end up dying. So I'm very excited to see how you can help me and what we can make work out here.
That sounds awesome. So typically, tell me some of the challenges you have. Do you have problems? Do things dry out? Do things just kind of die from nowhere? Tell me a little bit about what's happened here in the past.
Yes, so that side of my balcony has a lot of sun. A lot of stuff dries out really easily, especially since I tend to forget about it. I work on this side of my apartment, so going on that side of the balcony can be a challenge sometimes.
Sure.
I don't always see that, but I know that's where it gets the most sun, so some plants are best over there.
Okay, so this is an admission. Just so you know, we've never grown anything on a balcony before.
All right.
But we've grown a lot of plants, so I feel like we can help you. So we're going to try it out.
Yeah, I think it'll be great.
Awesome. Here we are on the sunny side of Amy's balcony, and so we've got a nice little corner here to work with. So we've brought in a couple of different types of planters. They're all self-watering, and we're going to use a mixture of sizes and shapes, and then also try to maximize the vertical growing space. So we're going to stack a lot of things in this corner and try to make it as productive as possible. As I mentioned, we're using all self-watering planters, and it sounds like a mystery, it sounds like super technical. It's basically a laundry basket, right, in a tub. And so what we do is we have a little bit of a reservoir that fills up, and then we have a grow bag in here, and there's also a piece of wicking fabric. So if you've ever taken a paper towel and put it in a puddle or something that's wet, it absorbs that. This is the same type of thing. So we'll have a reservoir of water that'll constantly be soaking up with this this wick, and it'll keep the root zone of the plant nice and moist but not too wet. So that's the concept behind this. All the planters that we're using use the same kind of very basic thing. You can make something like this at home on your own. This is just something that's kind of prefabricated and ready to go. So let's see if that works. Pretty happy with the setup here. We're making the most of the space. Now the next step comes and we're gonna fill this with soil. This is an important part because this is what all of these plants are going to rely on. So you need to make sure you have not just potting soil, but something that's going to give you the nutrients you need for fruits and vegetables. So it's not too much fertilizer. It's a slower release fertilizer. And then the other important thing you want to look at is finding a potting soil that is peat-free. And you don't have to. It's much easier to find something like a Miracle Grow. But an interesting fact about peat is that it is mined out of peat bogs, which turns out they are the best thing in the world at absorbing carbon. So peat bogs actually absorb 30% of the CO2 that is released into our atmosphere, even though they only take up something like 1/15 of the land mass. And so we want to conserve our peat bogs as much as possible. So that's why whenever you're looking for a potting soil, you should look for something that is peat-free. For soil, you're looking for something like this product here. It's made of decomposed forest products. They add some worm castings, some limestone, and a small amount of fertilizer. So you're just looking for something balanced. An important thing about growing in these containers is that you're going to have to use this soil up, and then you're going to have to replace it because you have an inert growing medium that constantly needs to be replenished. So this is something you're going to have to put in or at least refurbish at least every time you plant. Now comes the fun part. We got some nice plants here. We're going to concentrate mostly on transplanting herbs to get Amy started with her garden. We've got just one pepper. We're in the doldrums of August, so this isn't the best time to be planting at least transplanted vegetables like tomatoes or peppers. But we are going to put a lot of herbs in, and then we're going to direct seed some early fall stuff. So we're going to put in some lettuce, some radishes, some turnips, so that hopefully in about a month we'll also be able to harvest from that. We're back here at Amy's apartment. It's been about 6 weeks. Amy, what do you think so far? The garden's growing, isn't it?
I think it's been amazing. It's been so easy to take care of, especially with these self-watering containers. And I even have 2 little jalapenos down there.
Look at that.
And I can't wait to pick them. So
you're not quite growing all your own food, but we're working on it.
right, close.
Has there been anything that you haven't expected? Any kind of like surprises for this garden for you so far?
Yes. This container right here ended up not growing anything, so that was a little sad. Not a huge deal. And this huge self-watering container here, I've only had to water it twice since you guys started 6 weeks ago.
And it's been dry.
Yeah, so it's been really, really great.
That's amazing. And I think with this, we planted lettuce, which probably didn't do us any favors. It's been hot, it's been dry, so we'll see if we can't put something else in that might work.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for letting us invade your apartment patio. I hope it's changed the way you thought about gardening maybe a little bit, and maybe you'll continue to keep it going.
Absolutely. Glad to have you guys.
Thanks, Amy.
Of course.
So, what did we learn from this experiment? Well, there's a couple things that we have to consider whenever we grow food anywhere, particularly when we're growing vegetables that are putting a lot of energy into growing fruits and things that we harvest. Number one always is sunlight. So if we don't have enough sunlight, anything that we plant is just going to kind of hold there. And if you look, when we looked at the sunlight amounts on that patio, we had just barely enough. I think we're like at 4 hours. And so I think that's reason number one, we weren't seeing an overwhelming amount of growth. Thing number two you have to pay attention to, again, no matter where you're growing food, is water. If we don't get consistent water to plants, then they're not going to thrive. In fact, they'll die. Now, we solved that problem with the self-watering containers, but for some of the more tender plants that we direct seeded, like lettuce, they didn't do well because that water's coming up from underneath. So that self-watering containers really help with plants that are already established. If you're going to direct seed anything in a container, you have to make sure you water the top every single time. The third consideration is soil. When you're growing outside in large gardens, you want to rotate crops, but when you're growing in small confined areas, that's really not an option. It's really hard to rotate a gallon of soil. So what you're going to have to do every year is replace that soil. And so you can put it out into an existing garden, you can put it outside, but you do not want to reuse that soil. There's going to be root masses, it's going to increase your chance for diseases. The best thing you can do is replenish that soil at minimum every year. The other consideration, once you have your garden up and growing, it looks beautiful, you're going to be a prime target for pests. You know, you're in an urban environment, you're in a concrete jungle, so anything that you grow that is appetizing for any animal, they're going to find it. So you're going to have to deal with birds and squirrels and rabbits and insects. And we've talked at length on some strategies to mitigate those, but they are going to happen. We like to think we're removed from these things in kind of an urban environment, but they're actually more prevalent. So keep on the lookout for your pests and use some strategies to take care of them. 1 in 8 Americans actually lives in an apartment or a condo, and they may not have access to growing a lot of food. And many people won't even have a balcony like we've just planted. So what are some strategies for those folks? You know, we live in a concrete jungle and we want to be able to experience the food around us. There's a lot of possibilities. So you can join a community garden. There are often community gardens in urban areas. You might have to get public transit or actually drive a little ways, but that'll be a great way to kind of develop your green thumb. You might ask it to use some of the common areas that are available to you if you can keep them neat, and particularly if you're going to grow perennials, that's a great strategy. One of the really cool things about growing in an urban environment is all of the structures around you. So you have walls that you can grow things up, you have walls that absorb heat, and so that you can grow things below them that you may not be able to do in other environments. This is a really interesting example of it. Underneath us is actually a large parking deck. We're standing on a grate, and it pushes warm air during the winter. And we discovered this by accident, but our tomatoes thrived all winter long. We were picking tomatoes into December and even January because we kept this nice warm microclimate. So kind of look for what microclimates are accessible to you and take advantage of them. You're going to grow in a confined environment, you might as well make the most of it. You know, sometimes it's a little bit disconcerting if you're in a small space, you're not going to be able to grow all of your own food. And some folks might say, you know, what's the point? I can only grow a pepper, or I can only grow a basil plant. And I would say while that's true, small things can turn into big things, and small things actually matter. So, you know, a seed is really small, but it can grow into amazing potential. And the same thing is true for you learning how to grow food. You know, you might start at an apartment complex, you might graduate into a community garden, and who knows, you may be growing all of your food out in the country one day. And it all starts with a small seed. We have 20 to 30,000 years of latent agricultural knowledge that's now dormant for most of us. You know, our ancestors' ancestors didn't live unless they knew how to farm. And so all of that knowledge is just sitting there untapped, ready for you to experience it. So plant a seed, watch it grow, share the harvest. Take care and eat well.